Hello, now we are going to give a warm welcome to our Vice Rector, Prof. Zainuri.
Oke.
Halo, Prof.
Halo, good morning, selamat pagi.
Prof, ini kita baru mengecek sound, belum kita mulai dengan membuka. Terima kasih, Prof.
Ya.
And we are going to say hello to our Dean of Faculty Economics.
Hello, good morning, everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Good morning, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to start the conference. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Salam.
Hello, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to International Conference on Economics, Business, and Economics Education Science 2020 by Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Semarang. I'm your host, Martinda Intan Permatahati, and I'm very happy to be able to meet all participants, not only from Indonesia, but also from Malaysia, Taiwan, and Australia. Thank you for your participation in this event. Before we begin this conference, first let's say thanks to our God, who has been giving us guidance, happiness, healthy, and mercy, so we can participate in this event without any obstacles. Ladies and gentlemen, now allow me to welcome the Honorable the Vice Rector for Academic Affairs of Universitas Negeri Semarang, and the Honorable the Dean of Faculty of Economics, and all of the Executive Board. And please give a warm welcome to our invited speakers, Mr. Andre Rodriguez de Aquino from World Bank, the Honorable Dr. Muhammad Asri bin Muhammad Nur from UPSI, Malaysia, Mr. Dorojatun Prihandono, PhD from UNES, and give a warm welcome to our co-host, Professor Dr. Suharnomo, MSE, the Dean of Faculty of Economics, Universitas Diponegoro, Dr. Aris Saptono, SA, MPD, the Dean of Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Jakarta, and Professor Dr. Safinar Ismail, Deputy Rector for Research and Industrial Linkages, University Teknologi Mara Melaka, Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin this ceremony, I would like to request to all participants to stand. Let us sing the national anthem of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. you. You may proceed to your seat. Ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda will be the Dean's Report. For Dr. Andes Herianto, MBA, PhD, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable audience of International Conference on Economics, Business, and Economics Education Science 2020 or ISPES, Honorable Vice Rector of Academic Affairs, Professor Dr. Zayuneri Master MSc, and all invited deans and also director of postgraduate program. All distinguished plenary speakers, Mr. Andre Rodriguez de Aquino, Senior Natural Resources Management Specialist at the World Bank, Dr. Muhammad Asri bin Muhammad Nur, Dean of Faculty of Management and Economics, Sultan Idris Education University, Doro Jatun Prihandono PhD, Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Semarang, UNES, Indonesia. And all co-hosts, Professor Dr. Safinar Ismail, Deputy Rector for Research and Industrial Linkage, University Technology Maram, Malaysia. Professor Dr. Suharno Moemesi, Dean of Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Negeri Semarang, Universitas Diponegoro Semarang, sorry. I heard that Dr. Suharmono, today's your birthday. Happy birthday. Wish you all the best. Yeah. And also Dr. Ari Sabtono, SMMPD, Dean of Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Jakarta. Welcome to this webinar conference, which expect to attract all academicians, practitioners, students, and all related stakeholders to share ideas, practice, and concepts. For your information, the committee of this conference has received 186 abstracts submitted. However, only 166 participants were selected to present their papers. Most of them from Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan, and Australia. And I would like to say congratulations for all whose papers that will be presented in this yearly conference. The manuscript which will be presented are from various fields: management, business, education, development economics, business, and accounting related to environmental issues. We will be having one-day online conference which covers plenary session, workshop on Scopus publication, and parallel session. The workshop on Scopus publication is obligatory for all participants, all presenters, I mean. On behalf of Economics faculty, I would like to express my gratefulness and appreciation for the committee for the hard work that make this conference happen successfully. I would like Pak Zayuneri to deliver a welcoming speech and obviously open this international conference. Thank you very much and enjoy this webinar, and may all you have productive discussion. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, our Dean. And ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda will be the welcoming speech and also officially open this webinar from our Vice Rector for Academic Affairs. For Professor Dr. Zayuneri MSc Akate, the time is yours.
Thank you. Terima kasih. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, semangat pagi. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Good morning. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for blessing and mercy that we could assemble in Second International Conference on Economic, Business, and Economic Education Science, ICE-BES, this year 2020. The distinguished plenary speakers. Next. The first, Mr. Andre Rodriguez de Aquino, Senior Natural Resources Management Specialist at the World Bank. The second, Dr. Moh Asri bin Mohnur, Dean of Faculty of Management and Economics, Sultan Idris Education University, Malaysia. The third, Mr. Doro Jatun Prihandono, PhD, Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Semarang. Dean of Faculty Economics and All Dean and Postgraduate Program, Universitas Negeri Semarang. All distinguished guests, presenters, and participants, on behalf of Universitas Negeri Semarang, allow me, on behalf of Rector of UNES, I take great pleasure in welcoming all of you to this international conference solo online. On behalf of Rector, I would like to say thank you very much to all speakers that you will present insightful ideas according to your field of expertise in this international conference. I believe that your presentation will improve knowledge and experience of our participants and provide significant scientific contribution. I also extend my sincere gratitude to Dean of Faculty of Economics and our co-host committee. The first, Professor Dr. Safinar Ismail, Deputy Rector for Research and Industrial Linkage, University Teknologi Malaka, Malaysia. The second, Professor Dr. Suharnomo, MSc, Dean of Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Diponegoro, Indonesia. The third, Dr. Ari Sabtono, SE, MPD, Dean of Faculty of Economic, Universitas Negeri Jakarta, for their untiring efforts to organize this international conference. Ladies and gentlemen, the vision of Universitas Negeri Semarang is to be a conservation-oriented university with international reputation. We continuously build and develop collaboration with foreign institutions to improve human resources and bring out goodness to the world. UNES, as a house of science, we always do very best to produce quality human resources and various fields in order to make better life. This international conference adopts a timely theme, enhancing environmental quality through research on economic, business, and education. The challenge of sustainable development is good quality of environment. In fact, economic growth can cause environmental issues, and this conference creates awareness for people to prepare, thus be able to give contribution to our society. Its development and the prison of Faculty of Economic UNES is expected to be able to discuss and answering various environment, economic, business, and education. It definitely supports the vision of UNES is to be a conservation university oriented with international reputation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the milestone UNES 2020 until 2024. UNES is the teaching institute of higher education, so we are having two principal aims: growing as a research university and teaching university. Of course, this international conference is one of the strategies to develop the research innovation in UNES. UNES has 5 preference programs. The first, excellent human resources, insight, intelligence. The second, International Teaching Institute of Higher Education. The third, international accreditation and certification. The fourth, innovation, publication, and investigation. The fifth, good government and excellent service. It is clear that ICE-BES International Conference is going to support the academic environment in UNES and also improve the quality of human resources, especially Faculty of Economics UNES being inside intelligent researchers. Ladies and gentlemen, UNES has 8 faculties for undergraduate programs and 1 graduate school of master and doctoral programs. The development of academic field in all faculties are designed according to national education standard. Based on National Higher Education Accreditation Board, BAN-PT, UNES is awarded as an excellent university or R. Some of study programs are certified by AUNQA International Certification. Ladies and gentlemen, next. Coding and engineering for ICU. In this year, UNES in top 10 rank in national level, number 20 in 22 in ASEAN, number of 120 in Asia, and 606 in the world rank. Currently, this is the data of publication of UNES. Next. I do hope the international conference, which has 155 presenters from Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan, and Australia, would raise the number of publications in UNES. We realize that building a world-class university requires strategic international networking, but with well-known international organizations and institutions, as those present at ICE-BES International Conference. Therefore, I am proud of Faculty of Economics for second years consecutively having this ISPHE International Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, it is expected this international conference can produce significant and valuable ideas and also design the various possible contribution to the education system both in Indonesia and the world. I hope we can continuously build and develop collaboration with foreign institutions to improve human resources and bring out goodness to the world. Finally, the poem, di puncak Fujiyama terdapat es. Jangan lupa teruskan jalan-jalan. Selamat dan sukses ICE-BES di tengah COVID membangun peradaban. With this remark, I declare the second international conference on economic, business, and economic education science officially open, and wish you all fruitful deliberation. Thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for our Vice Director for giving a brief introduction also about our beloved campus. And ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the photo session. I would like to ask you to start your video so the committee can capture the moment, your happy face, of course. Yeah. Now let's start. We have about 7 slides. I will do it quickly. Okay. Please now the first slide, second slide, the third slide, fourth slide, fifth slide, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. It's already finished, right? Okay, and the 7, not 8 slide. Thank you for start video with us. And now this is the time we are waiting for. We are going to have our plenary session, and we have our moderator here. Please welcome Mr. Alfi Budi Setiawan, SA, MSE. The time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, the honorable guests and ladies and gentlemen. Please introduce my name. I'm Aktif Setiawan from Universitas Negeri Semarang, and today I will lead discussion. First of all, I'd like to thanks to Prof. Zainuri, Vice Rector Academic Affairs, who wished to deliver the opening speech, and Dean of Economics Faculty, Dr. Herianto. Thank you for giving us the opening speech. And today I would like to say hello to our speakers. First, we have Dr. Muhammad Asri bin Muhammad Nur from UPSI Malaysia. Good morning, Dr. Muhammad Asri.
Good morning. Good morning.
There is no time lag between Indonesia and Malaysia, right? Only 1 hour. So still
yeah, it's 1 hour. Yes, correct.
Okay. Good morning, Prof. Dr. Muhammad Asri bin Muhammad Nur. And our second speaker is Dr. Durojatun Prihandono from Universitas Negeri Semarang. Good morning, Dr. Durojatun.
Good morning, Pak Afi.
Okay. You know, I'm very proud to lead the session with you because he is my senior in economics faculty.
Me as well, thanks.
So you are online from your home, Dr.
Yes,
Dodi?
my home. Yes.
I hope you already take your breakfast. You were taking some.
Yes, I have. Would you like some?
Okay, thank you. Okay, and our third speaker, we will have Mr. Andre Rodriguez de Aquino. Good morning, Mr. Andre. Good morning. Still?
Okay.
Okay.
Ya, selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi Bapak-bapak, Ibu-ibu. Sekian, salam dari Jakarta.
Okay. Mr. Andre, you know, I feel confident if I lead your session using bahasa. Because
Mungkin, bisa coba.
Okay, but unfortunately, we must do the discussion in English. Mr. Andre, happy.
Bisa juga bahasa Portugis, mungkin.
Okay, Mr. Andre, thank you for your participation here. Okay, the honorable participant, we will have a 1.5 hours to have this discussion session. Each speakers will have 30 minutes for send their materials, for deliver their materials. And the first occasion I will give to Dr. Muhammad Asri bin Muhammad Nur from UPSI. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, now the environment is getting important because the economics perspective adds environment to do something better. Before COVID-19 pandemic have us, environment become one of the most important thing that we will discuss. And now we will discuss some research, some presentation about environment studies. We will have 3 speakers here. They already makes a great job about environment and development studies and also economics. And for first occasion, I will invite Dr. Muhammad Asri bin Muhammad Nur from UPSI. He will present the presentation with the topic is education policy and management practice during COVID-19 pandemic in Malaysia. But before Dr. Muhammad Asri deliver the speech, I would like to inform you. If you have some questions or comment, please kindly write in the chat room because I will mention your speaking. I will mention your questions. Okay, and you can start your question from the first speakers and then second speakers and third speakers. Okay, Dr. Muhammad Asri,
Yes.
are you still there?
Yep,
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, we will have a 30 minutes. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Mr. Moderator and the Deputy Rector of UNES. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to everybody. All right, I'm just checking. Will somebody share the PowerPoint slides, or do I need to put it up myself? All right, I'll just continue. Okay, right. So, all right. First of all, I would like just to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak at this plenary session today. Of course, I am truly honored to be with all of the esteemed speakers that we have today with us, and it is also an honor to talk about something that all of us here have in common. We are all in the same boat today. We are all in the same battle, and I hope that through this sharing session, perhaps we could at least have a high hope that things will get better very soon, inshallah. Right. I've been asked to talk about how Malaysia handle its education, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic over here. So perhaps this could be a sharing session for everyone. I'm sure every country has its own way of handling this situation. So perhaps we can learn from each other on how best to handle such situation in such a critical situation like what we are facing right now. Next slide, please. Now, however, to begin my presentation or my sharing session, I think I need to set the context for this discussion, so that everybody gets the picture of what's going on. I will briefly describe the extraordinary situation that Malaysia was in during the early stage of the pandemic. As most of us know, at that time, Malaysia was going through a small political crisis, where on the afternoon of the 24th February, the 7th Prime Minister of Malaysia, Tun Mahathir Mohamad, resigned his post. He sent his resignation letter to His Majesty the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, and on the 1st March 2020, Malaysia saw the swearing in of our 8th Prime Minister, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin. Now, about a week later, the new Prime Minister, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, announced his cabinet of 31 ministers. And interestingly, for the first time in the history of Malaysia, we do not have a prime minister. Instead, we have senior ministers who assist the prime minister. And the Ministry of Education is then split into two, becoming the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Higher Education. So this is the context that I want to share, so that we understand from the beginning what Malaysia was going through at the moment. Next slide, please. Now, as it is today, well, we are still in the battle. We are still fighting COVID-19. In the case of Malaysia, we first detected the case on the 25th of January 2020. And between 25 January to 15 January, we detected a further 22 cases. Now, for 11 days between 16 to 26 February, we somehow experienced 0 cases, and that was really a good sign then. But then on March 11, 2020, the largest cluster linked to a mass religious gathering was identified, which led to massive spikes in local cases and exportation of cases to neighboring countries. So because of what was happening at that time, the government took necessary actions to flatten the curve. So the government enforced the first phase of Movement Control Order, MCO in Malaysia, on the 18th of March 2020. So we had various phases of MCO in Malaysia, beginning from 18 March until 9 June. And after 9 June, after evaluating the situation, which was about 3 months after we locked down, the government finally decided that we are ready to relax the movement control order. So beginning from June 10, 2020, the government enforced the RMCO, or Recovery Movement Control Order. So as it stands today, in Malaysia, there are about 8,815 cases of COVID-19 at the moment, with 123 deaths in Malaysia. So that's what the situation is like in Malaysia at the moment. And like I said earlier, we are still in it, and everybody is in the same boat, and we are still fighting this battle. Next slide, please. Now, with the context that I've laid down, many people would think that because when the pandemic started in Malaysia, at least, like I said earlier, we had a new government, we had a new prime minister. So many would think that with these newly appointed ministers, Malaysia will be struggling a bit in managing, well, not only the whole country, but specifically in terms of education during the pandemic. But the fact is, on the contrary, actually, I would say that the government has managed to manage the situation quite well from the beginning. Maybe perhaps this was due to the fact that from the beginning, the government has made sure that information should only be relayed by one person through the Prime Minister or the senior minister on security, and the Ministry of Health, usually relayed by the Director General of Health. Whenever we want to get information regarding the management of the pandemic, these are the people that would usually relay the information or the message. And decision and actions that are to be taken are usually monitored by the National Security Council. So I think this also contributed to the success. To me, I think it's a success to the success of managing, especially managing the information and managing how we manage the pandemic. In fact, all of the actions and standard operating procedures that we want to take or we want to introduce have to be approved by the National Security Council or NSC. So of course, at the beginning of the pandemic in Malaysia, things were a bit chaotic. You know, it's the same everywhere. Panic buying and things like that happen, but only at the beginning. But once everything has been set into a place, and the government has sort of control or curb the spreading of fake news. We managed to reduce misinformation. We managed to reduce panic among the public. So I think controlling how how and who and when you deliver information and messages is very important in managing education, economy, or whatever we want to manage during a crisis like this. Next slide, please. Now, what about managing education during the MCO, during the movement control order? Now, I mentioned earlier that when we imposed the movement control order, we only had ministers of education, ministers of higher education who have just been appointed about 10 days earlier. So, of course, people might think that it's quite difficult for them to handle the situation. But like I said, because of the way we manage information, controlling that information should come from only one person, I think we are able to manage, these two ministers are able to manage education quite well during the MCO. Now, in Malaysia, with effect from 18 March 2020, all kindergartens, all government and private schools, including daily schools, boarding schools, international schools, tahfiz centers, and other primary, secondary, and pre-university institutions were all closed beginning 18 March 2020. And similarly, all public and private higher education institutions and skills training institutes throughout the country were also closed. This is not much different from from the actions that are taken by many other countries in the world. But nevertheless, most of the lessons for school children were continued online through the use of Google Classroom and various other platforms. Now, it is interesting to note that when we talk about Google Classroom, it is interesting to note that in Malaysia, the Ministry of Education has been spending a lot on the infrastructure over the past two and a half years to enable Google Classroom to be conducted, as part of the efforts to embrace the 21st century learning. Now, this proved to be very useful, especially during the pandemic, because since most teachers have been exposed to Google Classroom, they did not have much of a problem to actually carry out the lessons using Google Classroom platform during that time. But of course, however, of course, there were issues with students who do not have access to the internet, students who do not have computers, students who do not have gadgets. This is compounded by the fact that from a study done according to the Minister of Education, based on a study on about 900,000 students in Malaysia, it was found that only between 5% to 9% students, okay, between 5% to 9% students who own either a computer, a laptop, or tablet. Right. So it became a problem to some students who have limited access to the internet and also to the technology. And also it became a problem for example, in a household, if you have only one computer, it is quite challenging to follow online classes if there is more than one school-going child living at home. You know, you have 2, 3 children, 4, 5 children at home, and you only have one laptop or computer, if you have. In some cases, you don't have such devices. So, of course, there were some problems with certain groups, but to address this, of course, the government, the Ministry of Education, the State Education Department, and the district officers allow teachers to use other platforms, you know, to carry on lessons. So it is important to think about using synchronous and asynchronous method in going through this lesson. Of course, the most affected area would be people from the Borneo, from Sabah and Sarawak, and those who are living in the very remote rural area. The university, UPSI, for example, my university, for example, what we do is we also send or post hard copy study materials to these students to ensure that no one is left behind. Right, next slide, please. Now, how did we prepare our teachers during MCO? So, because teachers were asked to use the internet, to use digital technology to carry out lessons during the MCO, and there is an intensifying use of digital technology in remote teaching. Although, like I said earlier, most teachers are quite familiar with Google Classroom platform and so on and so forth, there are also other means of delivering these online lessons. And the Ministry of Education, the State Education Department, the district officers, as well as the schools, have encouraged teachers to learn these new technologies through various workshops and webinars that were carried out during MCO. Now, it was also very encouraging to see that many teachers are engaged in learning new knowledge and skills to deliver lessons to the students. And in fact, in some cases, a group of teachers, they form PLC, and they share samples of online lessons among themselves to increase the options, to provide more options so that they can use to teach their students. So teachers were also exposed to synchronous and asynchronous assessment methods during this time, for them to explore and for them to identify what would be the most appropriate to be used for their students. So I think preparation for teachers were done. We were making use of the period or the time that we have during MCO to ensure that teachers upskill themselves, get the proper knowledge, get the proper skill, so that online lessons can be delivered properly. Next slide, please. Another aspect that we need to understand, we need to consider. Next slide, please. The Ministry of Education, in fact, the government, took steps to assure students and parents. Now, I think this is also quite a very important aspect to look at when we are managing education in a crisis like this. Of course, these are anxious times for both students and parents because of the uncertainties about when life will return to normal. People get even more anxious. So it is very important, and it became a very high priority to reassure students and parents, and of course, I think those of you who are from those participants who are from Malaysia would agree with me when we say that during the MCO, people were looking forward to the daily press conference that the government, that the minister was making. Every day, people were looking forward to listen to this press conference because we know that if you want to get the correct information, we listen to the press conference. So during the MCO, students and parents alike look forward to the press conference delivered by the Ministry of Education as well as the Minister of Higher Education, besides the senior minister and the Prime Minister, because they want to get information. So information is disseminated through these press statements as well as circulars from the relevant agencies to explain the next course of actions, as well as to explain or to talk about the standard operating procedures that need to be followed. So, and similarly, at the state education, at the state level and the district level and the local level in schools, they send regular messages to parents to explain about new development. So I think dissemination of information, dissemination of the correct information is very important to help us manage the situation during a pandemic like this. And I think the ministries, the relevant ministries have been doing quite a good job in making sure that all the relevant parties get the correct information to avoid chaos and panic among the people. Next slide, please. Now we are now in the new normal. In fact, today, the 22nd of July, 2020, today, all schools in Malaysia are allowed to be reopened. Next slide, please. However, the Ministry of Education has prepared very stringent SOPs to be followed by all schools. For example, all students are required to observe the 1 meter social distancing at all times. But remembering that and understanding that you cannot have one size fit all solution, the Ministry of Education has given the liberty to school to choose the model of operation that they think suit them best. So the Ministry of Education has proposed 3 models of operation. Model one is schools to conduct lessons within one session, meaning from just one session school. And this option is for schools that are able to accommodate all their students, and schools that choose this model will operate as usual, meaning as the way they were operating before MCO. Model two is a dual session school, whereby schools can be operated in the morning and in the afternoon. So they have 2 sessions, morning session and afternoon session. And this is especially for schools that are not able to accommodate all their students at one time. Remember, we have to follow the SOP. We cannot have more than 17 students in one class, for example. So that there is social distancing and so on and so forth. So the school might not be able to cater all the students, to accommodate all the students at one time. So perhaps this could be the best model for them. And the third model is a rotational system model. Now, model 3 should be the last option. if schools tried but failed to operate under Model 2, for example. So in this model, in Model 3, students in Form 1, for example, Form 1 meaning grade 7, yeah? Form 1, grade 7 to grade 10, Form 4, for example, must be rotated according to their classes and streams. So one group of students will come for that particular day or week, and then the next particular group. So we rotate those who come to school. But this is the last option. So if we look at all this, very brief, I think I only have about 4 or 5 minutes. If you look at all this brief explanation, brief description that I'm sharing with you, I think we are doing the right thing at the moment. We are analyzing the situation. We are looking at what needs to be done and what should be avoided. But of course, we must understand that COVID-19 has changed the social landscape of many countries affected by it. And the area of educational management has also been affected. Next slide, please. And we are now actually in a transition to the new normal. And in order to do this, in order for this transition to really take place, we need strong leadership from the government right down to the community. And of course, the new normal is all about change. When we talk about this new normal, we are talking about change. And to lead educational change, both at the macro level and the micro levels, are very challenging. It's very challenging to lead educational change at this level. But the way I see it so far, what the government has done is positive. The government has dealt with the pandemic head on. And of course, like I said earlier, in order to prepare the nation for the new normal, especially in the education sector, guidelines and circulars have been prepared, SOPs have been prepared. And relevant agencies have disseminate information to the relevant parties. But when we want to do this educational change in terms of the new normal, we cannot simply manage this change. We have to reframe this change. The government has to reframe this change into what it means for the people, for those people who are involved at these various stages. What does it mean to the institutions involved? What does it mean to higher education institutions? What does it mean to schools? What does it mean to the kindergartens and nurseries and so on and so forth? So I think what the government is doing is positive, because it does not prescribe using one model. It has given leeway to various institutions who are involved to identify what is best for them, what is the most suitable for them. This is very important in managing the crisis that we're facing right now. The other thing that the government has to do is, we are not supposed to only talk about change, but we are supposed to talk about the what of change and the how of change. Meaning the government, in this case, the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Higher Education, need to tell people what should be done, how it can be done. So that is very important. And I also think that this has been taken care of most of the time. Now, I think to summarize, I think the Malaysian experience is something that we can learn from, everybody can learn from. Three things that we can take up from whatever we have discussed, from what the government has been doing: relevance, readiness, and resources. Meaning, if we want to make sure that everybody is able to change during the new normal, the government must make sure that the change that we're introducing is relevant. Number two, everybody is ready for the change that we want to introduce in this new normal. And of course, number three is we provide the necessary resources for that for that new normal, for that change to take place in education sector. So I pray that all of us will continue to take care of ourselves in this challenging time. And once again, I thank you, the organizer, for inviting me to speak on this topic. And with that, I thank you all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Asri, for your very nice presentation. But apologize, Dr. Asri, because this conference held it online, so we could not hear the applause from the participant. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, again, I would like to inform you, if you have some questions or comment, please kindly type your question to the chatting room and I will mention your questions. Okay, and now we will move to the second presenter, Dr. Durujatun. Dr. Durujatun, are you there?
Yes, I'm still here, Pak Afi. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you clearly. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the next presenter, Dr. Durujatun, will present the materials about are we ready for new normal. As we see that now we are entering to the new normal session. If you read books from Yuval Noah Harari with the title Sapiens, we can get one of the important information. The human being basic ability is survival. So I think some diction that we are here now, new normal, new balance, new equilibrium, is all about the diction about surviving strategy. That's the result of an evolutionary process for the human being. And now Dr. Dodi will present the presentation with the title is, Are we preparing for the new normal? Foreseeing opportunities using knowledge management to assess a broader business sustainability. Dr. Dodi, you will have 30 minutes and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Afi. Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. And also I would like to say good morning to the Honorable Vice Rector, Prof. Zainuri, the Honorable Dean of Economics Faculty, Pak Herianto, PhD, and also all of the guests from Malaysia, Dr. Asri from UITM, and also the third speaker, Mr. Andre Aquino from the World Bank. First of all, I would like to thank the committee for inviting me to this conference. It's very honorable for me to have and share a little bit of knowledge that I can provide for the conference. Okay, let's start. I would like to share the screen. All right, can you see the screen, Pak Afi?
Slides, Dr. Dodi.
Yep.
It's clear.
Okay, all right. Okay, the topic that I would like to share with all of you is about the preparing for the new normal. Are we as academics, as a business, and also as students maybe or graduates ready for the new normal? I think it's quite weird for us because it's really unexpected that this kind of pandemic could occur in this planet. So are we ready for this new normal? So we would like to take you how we would have to foreseeing the opportunities using knowledge management to access broader business sustainability. So I agree with Dr. Asri from his previous presentation. This is quite an unexpected event. Yeah. We have to ready for the plan post of the pandemic. And we have also the question, will the business bounce back? If we use a a little bit metaphor. Maybe Pak Afid or the other colleagues play games in the computer or in their cell phone. It is like a reset button in a game that we played. Everything just shut down, everything just reset. We have to do all over again from the start. We just don't know what to do. It's in all sectors, and many businesses collapse, including in the education sectors. So I retrieved this a chart from, or a picture, can if you can say that, from PwC, from the PricewaterhouseCoopers, that there there are three waves of COVID-19 crisis response. The first is immediate term, the second wave is the medium term, and the third wave is the long term. So at the first step, we need to mobilize, secure the safety of your workforce, and establish response structure. The second is to stabilize, develop tactical responses to the challenges of navigating the COVID-19 new normal. And also in the future, we would like to, and we have to do the strategic things. We have to be able to strategize, design a strategy for emerging stronger in the post-COVID-19 economy. There are six key areas which also I retrieved from the business consultant. This is from the PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. There are six key areas. The first is the crisis management. Second is the workforce. The third is supply chain. And the fourth is tax and trade. Next is finance and liquidity. And the sixth is strategy and brand. All of these six key areas, we have to be aware in all sectors, also in the education sectors. Recent fact is consumer need even more human touch. We have to be able to provide them with the personal approaches. So making choices could be difficult for some consumers without being able to see the products or service in person. So we have to be able using technology, using ITs, using application, just like Dr. Asri said in his previous presentation. In Malaysia and UITM, they use several and many kinds of application. And also online transaction is quite important and pertinent here as well with personal feel. So it's a challenge for us in education sector as well, in business and every kind of sectors, that we have to be able to provide the consumers with personal feel. Solving problems with no human contact. It's uh, it seems unreal if we look back around 1 decade ago, but now we can have health services with no human contact. You can use your cell phone, you can use your computer, your laptops to have health services. You just ask the artificial in quotation mark practitioners or general practitioner, the GPs or the doctor, or you can uh, provide them with your symptoms and they will prescribe you with medicine or treatment. I think it's, it's kind of uh, personal touch that we need for any kind of sectors. So what next? This is the first question that I would like to share with you. How are we going to cope with this condition? Or we just wait and see? I think in the first month or maybe in the 2 months of this pandemic, people just get stunned, just get euphoria. Oh, this is a horrible event. So maybe some of them just wait and see, or we can do some pattern which is follow other businesses path, or are we are going to quit, do another business doing diversification, or we have to be innovative. So this is the questions that we have to answer. There are basic things to do with that I would like to share with you as well. So the first thing is we have to assess valuable and needed theories, because in academic context, we we have our ability to assess the theories, to assess the previous empirical knowledge and many other resources. And the next is stop making everything more complicated. We have to be concise. We have to be able to make everything more efficient. Simplify things, straightforward action plans, listen to others' option, and also stop blaming each other. The first thing that we have to be able to assess is the knowledge management. Knowledge management is based on the idea that an organization's most valuable resources is the knowledge of its people. Therefore, the extent to which an organization performs well will depend, among other things, on how effectively its people can create new knowledge and share knowledge around the organization and use the knowledge to best effect. As we all know and all we discover that we have two kind of knowledge. The first is tacit and explicit, and also we have old and new knowledge. We have to be able to combine all of this knowledge definition into practice, into research, into plans, action plan. That is the most important thing at this moment. Tacit knowledge, which is we cannot duplicate tacit knowledge. We have to be able to see, to learn, and how to do the right things. Explicit, I think it's quite simple. We can read the theory and practice. Knowledge management also need also can provide a sustainable environment that can provide all the three pillars to develop in steady progress. How we can we assess our problems? What do we need in short and long terms? That is the practical question that we need to assess. Also, we need to look at our assets. So the main three factors that would I would like to share with you is the knowledge, network, and perseverance. Knowledge management, as all we know, good knowledge management is all about getting the right knowledge in the right place at the right time. And I think knowledge management to adopt to cope with this kind of condition, I think it's little different from the knowledge that we have to be able to apply in the normal, because we have the new normal at present. The sustainable environment that can provide all the three pillars to develop in steady progress. How we can assess how do we need in short and long terms. So as an academic, there is a need for academic students and industry to develop better sustainable business environment. We need to assess, we need to study what kind of environment that we face, and also we need maybe revolutionary approach or maybe evolutionary. I think many or every businesses have their own uh, distinct strategy, whether they can do revolutionary or the other way around. Each party has to be able to utilize knowledge management itself. So by using knowledge management, we have the resources, we have the students graduates, we have that kinds of predicate as a PhD, as a doctoral, as the master degree. We can use that, we can utilize that. We have to be able to utilize our networking as well. So I think it's useless if we have our own knowledge and we cannot share with uh, anybody else. We cannot share it with the industry. We cannot share it with the other parties. I think it will be difficult for us to make the sustainable businesses. And also, we need perseverance. I think all of us are getting down at a mental state at this moment, but we have to be able to rise. We have to be able to cope with the condition. All over the globe, we face the same problem. So perseverance is important for us to be able to sustain the businesses. Based on the maybe this research, some kind of example that I've been done in several months ago, that knowledge management also can be an outcome. So what's the next? So because previously I told you about the what's next. So this is what's the next. Perhaps this is the 1 million first question that we need to answer. No one knows what will happen in the next 5 years. Maybe shorter than that. The dynamics is getting bigger. By using this back to basic framework, you know, we, as I said previously, knowledge, we can use our network and also our perseverance. We will be able to generate new and innovative ideas for our action plans. We, I think it's not a rocket science. I think we have to be able to do things more concisely, straightforward things, not with the not with what can I say, with the complicated theories. I'm not agree with that. We have to be uh, go with the straightforward strategy. So what do we need, or what do you need? Your existing supply chain, it is need to be changed. If we say in maybe in marketing and distribution context, what real estate you need, what kind of properties do you need, do you have the right tools to do that? Can you cope with your resources, especially humans? Do you have proper and robust plans? So it will be carry on, and we need to decide and answer. And it has to be fast. So we need to have doable, you know what I mean? Doable action plans, not those complicated things. We have to be straightforward. To assess the damage, try to recover in this new normal condition, gain customer trust if we look at the marketing point of view, and also maybe in the next uh, year we can have profit. Not only cash, but networking, society, and as I said previously, sustainability of the environment. It's not only about preserving the trees, the gardens, and all of those plants, flora and fauna, but the sustainable business that it is uh, good with the other parties. So the expert says, yeah, it's gonna be so easy. Well, so maybe if the committee would like to share this presentation to the participants, they will able to use the link so they can uh, you know read and assess several examples or instances that are able in the strategic context of the business, how they can cope, how can they face the challenge, how they will do the action plans. So I think that's it. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. Terima kasih. Selamat pagi. So the floor is yours again, Pak Afi. Cheers.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dorojatun, for the very inspiring presentation. I totally get some new knowledge for after reading and watching your presentation. And now, the honorable guest, we will move to the third presenter. We will have Mr. Andre Rodriguez de Aquino from the World Bank. Mr. Andre Rodriguez, masih online?
Yes, Pa. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, after we get some knowledge related to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and then are we preparing for the new normal, now we move to the environment studies who will be delivered by Mr. Andre Aquino. He is a senior natural resources management from the World Bank, and according to his CV, he already made so many great jobs related to the environment around the world. He has some experience, and today he will deliver the speech with the topic is World Bank Environment Practices in Indonesia for Sustainable Development. For Mr. Andre Rodriguez, you will have 30 minutes for presenting your presentation. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here. So selamat pagi Bapak-bapak, Ibu-ibu, sekian. Once again, it's an important topic, as my previous colleagues have already mentioned, particularly now that we are going through these unprecedented times. Let me just start by saying that the very cause of the pandemic we live now is intrinsically linked to the environment. As we know, emerging infectious diseases are linked to wildlife management, wildlife trade, wildlife use, and as such, it is, in essence, an environmental issue understood in a broad way. So I'm very glad that the Universitas Negeri Semarang is not only interested in the topic, but using it as the main leitmotif for the conference. I really liked when the vice rector mentioned that the university is seeking to have a berwawasan konservasi. So I believe strongly that without a deep change in the way we approach the relation between humans and their environment, their natural resources, we may have problems and a reduction in quality of life that is not in line with the progress that humanity has been seeing. So just like my predecessor mentioned, we might be looking at really different ways of looking at the world. It's a new world. So without further ado, let me just try to assess, I will try to approach this issue really from an economic perspective, which is how the World Bank approaches some of these challenges. So why natural resources and the environment for the development of Indonesia? I think it is clear to everyone. It's not me, a foreigner, that needs to remind you of the extraordinary natural assets that Indonesia has, and the fact that to a large extent they have fueled growth in the past 20 years. The country has 50% of its territories on forest land. It has the second largest coast in the world, magnificent reefs, mangroves, largest mangroves in the world, largest and most and highest quality coral reefs in the world. Now, from an economic perspective, 1 in 4 jobs are somehow related to natural resources, including agriculture, fisheries, and forestry. 14% of the GDP comes from forestry, fisheries, and agriculture, and commodity prices are an important part of GDP growth, including export value, which has a big part related to natural resources. Now, environmental mismanagement, however, has been leading to economic loss, degradation of natural resources, and sometimes not benefited those that need it the most. It's interesting to note that forest and coastal villages often have higher poverty rates than the national average, which indicates a need for targeted interventions. I mean, I should mention that Indonesia has made significant reductions in poverty in the past years, but there are still pockets of poverty, and often they are related to populations in around natural resources. In 2015, the World Bank did a calculation that the extensive fires that took place cost the economy almost 2% of its GDP, mostly from respiratory diseases, but also from the emissions of greenhouse gases. So environmental degradation has direct economic consequences through health. It's also sometimes making the economy less competitive. It's particularly important in some of the commodities such as palm oil, which is such an important commodity for the economy of Indonesia, but also tourism. I mean, we have seen that tourism has been affected by marine plastic. And not only in Indonesia, I mean, some places like in the Philippines and in Thailand, they have even closed some areas because of marine plastics. This has not yet happened in Indonesia, but Bali, for instance, has been suffering from this in a big way. And then the last thing I would mention is vulnerability. I mean, we are all aware of climate change, which is a global phenomenon, but Indonesia is a highly vulnerable country for its very geography. I mean, it's an archipelago. It's the largest archipelagic nation in the world. So you can imagine the types of natural events that they are prone to. One example is the very fact that currently the government is considering a move of the capital. One of the reasons being the fact that Jakarta is suffering from subsidence. And I know that actually, I mean, the area where Semarang is, Demak, Semarang, Pekalongan, has also been exposed to this type of vulnerability. So now the government has been taking measures, has been making commitments. One very important one is the commitment that Indonesia made internationally to the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, where Indonesia committed to reducing its emissions by 29% with domestic resources, or 41% with international support. One very important sector for this reduction is forestry and energy. Now, a little bit on details on the issues. The land use meaning agriculture, forestry, it has been costly and has caused negative repercussions. There has been deforestation associated with palm oil expansion, and the government has taken measures for that, such as a moratorium in addressing deforestation. Forest fires have led to respiratory diseases. $16 billion in losses were reported in 2015. Now, with the oceans rise, also land subsidence, as I mentioned in Northern Java, but also in Sumatra, Southern Sumatra, for instance, could lead to flooding, reducing production capacity. So now also land use can be intensified. I mean, if we compare the productivity of palm oil between Malaysia and Indonesia, for instance, there is the potential of increasing the production per unit of land. So instead of increasing the area cultivated, increasing the intensifying land use. Now, also another challenge has been the issue of land access. The government has pledged a very comprehensive and ambitious program of reforma agraria, right, of land reform. This is still happening, but particularly land rights in forest areas have not been recognized as quickly as the government had expected. And particularly not only recognizing the tenure, but then helping these communities living in the forest areas to have access to services that will allow them to get benefits from using the forest. So I think here it's a matter of continuing the commitments that the government have already made in implementing. So this was on the land use. Another area is oceans, very important. The oceans economy has massive potential. The resources have been overexploited. So most of the fisheries in Indonesia at this stage are either fully exploited or have been overexploited, and data could be strengthened for fisheries management. I mean, this is something, again, that the government is fully aware and working on. Now, one important thing is on the quality of life of coastal communities. Coastal communities still often face higher poverty levels, and fishermen particularly have higher poverty levels. So, and this is linked to several cases, but one important one is that this might be an issue with the fact that, I mean, the fact that fisheries are being over-harvested and fishermen depend on them may lead to a vicious cycle. And to complement this, you can imagine, I mean, fish depend on a healthy ecosystem, mangroves, seagrass, coral reefs. And these also are suffering some effects. I mean, marine plastic is contributing to degradation. We have, I mean, there was an Indonesian research that showed that fish in the, almost 30% of the fish in the markets in Makassar contained plastic. So as you can imagine, I mean, quite important quantities. And then, I mean, I would just add one more challenge. So we talked about land, forest, and now the air we all breathe. Indonesia's air quality can be improved. Jakarta's air quality can be improved. The reduction in traffic in COVID provided a little respite, but this will be undone very quickly. Waste management is something that the government of Indonesia has been trying to tackle, but it's still 1 in 3 people in urban areas don't have access to solid waste services, just to give you an idea. And recycling is still limited. I mean, it's okay, let me move on. Now, I would just like to mention how, I mean, to emphasize again the fact that this is something that the government has been committed to. The sustainability agenda is reflected in various development targets and very high in the agenda, in the priority projects of the government, in the RPGMN, and so on. For the World Bank, the environment is one specific pillar of our support to the government. We call it managing natural assets for prosperity. The one program, the one important program that we have been supporting is what we call Sustainable Landscape Management Program. It's basically trying to help the government and partners address many of the issues we just raised here, including improving administration of land, developing some of the priority landscapes, including forests, peatlands, gambut, improving the management of forest resources, involving rural communities further in the benefits of forests. And now we are moving into sustainable financing, particularly climate financing, working with the Ministry of Finance in the National Climate Change Agency. Now, as you can imagine, all of this needs the coordination of such a big number of actors. So we have been partnering, supporting the government in trying to improve coordination, stakeholder engagement, and communication. So this is part of what we call Sustainable Landscape Management Program. And a second large program we have been supporting is the Sustainable Oceans Program. And this program basically tries to support the sustainability of oceans. It has a component on marine debris, helping reduce marine pollution, helping improve management of fisheries and the benefits to fishermen, and strengthening the coastal resilience. So that's your corals, mangroves, so management of these natural resources. For that, we have several projects. I will not go into the details, but here I think what matters is that there are many different instruments that are needed to move this agenda forward, including a lot of analytical work. Analytical work for which the universities, right, play a very important role. Now, a little bit of how we can advance the agenda. I mean, some ideas here for the agenda on forests, continuing the management of peat and reducing fire in an integrated manner. And here again, I would like to emphasize the role of even local universities to work with local communities, extension services, to bring them together in these efforts of preventing firefighting. Another important agenda is continuing the clarification of land boundaries, particularly in Sumatra, and promoting ways that the communities benefit from their forests, including through the use of products from the forest like honey, even timber when sustainably managed. Tourism, very important. Right now, of course, there's a crash, but in the future again. Now, on the oceans agenda, the blue agenda, science-based fisheries. I mean, managing fish based on the best available data. Here again, I would emphasize the role of universities, research institutions in providing data, in helping monitor. These are very complex ecosystems. We sometimes don't even know or have the data on to understand how they work. So very important participation of the academia. Another area is reducing marine debris. And again, here we have seen the importance of the youth, of students, of mobilization in addressing this issue. We have seen campaigns around Indonesia, Gerakan Indonesia Bersih, others that are trying to really mobilize action. So I think that's something that students have an important role to play. Just to conclude, I think some other reforms include solid waste management, improving the management of your solid waste particularly, and reducing air pollution through different, because it's through technologies, through also behavior change, people using less polluting equipment and so on. I will not take more of your time. This is a lot of material in a very short span of time, but I think it covers this. I would just finalize this by saying again that environmental concerns are is a responsibility of each one of us. We require really significant behavior change, and it's something that the universities and the academia world could play a very important role, both from a research, an education, awareness raising, and engagement role. I think, I mean, universities and academia have been at the forefront of change in society, and it seems that this environmental issue is one of those big moments where really joint common vision need to come together for things to be done in a different manner. With that, saya mengucapkan terima kasih for the opportunity and look forward for the discussion. Terima kasih.
Presentation. But before we move to the question and answer session, maybe you can ask my question. Is there any relationship between the economic condition of the countries with the awareness toward environment in each country, according to your experience?
Can you repeat the question? I'm not sure I understand.
Okay. Is there any relationship between the economic condition of each countries with the awareness to preserve the environment in countries that you ever visit before?
Yeah, okay. I think this is a bit of a, this is, there's a lot of theories about this, right? I mean, one common one in economics is the Kuznets curves that would say that the environment is almost sort of a luxury good that a country would need to reach a certain level of development before paying attention to environmental issues. Empirical data does not really confirm that. I think there are some topics in the environmental agenda that probably indeed become more accentuated as the level of industrialization and welfare of people increase. But again, I mean, if we address the environment as vital services for humanity, then I think we all depend on it. I would just like to say one thing. Societies that depend on natural resources normally show the greatest awareness of environment. I am Brazilian myself. This is not a very good time to talk about my country, unfortunately, because of the political leadership. But I would just like to mention one thing. The indigenous people in my country, for instance, that hold vast areas of important significance, like the Amazon, are the ones that have greatest environmental awareness because they fully depend on the environment. So I would just say that I think this all depends really on how we look at the environmental issues, and I think that when society as a whole has a bigger understanding of the linkage between what they depend on, where the water that they drink comes from, where part of the economy that they live on comes from. When that is clear, you see more awareness and you see more willingness to engage and manage environmental in a more sustainable way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Andre. Ladies and gentlemen, actually, there are some questions to already enter to the chatting room, but almost of the question also been answered by the speakers. Dr. Dodi already answered the questions, and also Dr. Dr. Asri also answered the question, but it's still one question that it must be answered by Mr. Andre. There are questions from Mrs. Inaya, Dr. Andre, from Universitas Negeri Semarang. He asked about what is your opinion about the baby lobster export of Indonesia after previous ban aimed at conserving the whale population? Do you think that it is the deterioration of policy?
Should we take more questions maybe and then respond many at once?
Okay. Actually, there are all of the questions already answered by the presenter, but it would be a one question that I think Mr. Dodi would like to answer the questions. What is your advice, Mr. Dodi, related to the academics to carry out the community service and research during this pandemic? So what is the most needed contribution that we can give, maybe?
Okay, thank you, Pak Afi. I think for the community service, I think we have the instruction from the ministry that we are obliged to commence it in the online form. So I think that is one of the alternatives that we can provide for the students because of the pandemic, and also due to the this condition, I think it's quite possible for us to provide them with the best practices in cope with this kind of condition. Maybe provide them with the training to start the application to the business for the community, yeah, especially for the small medium enterprises. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dodi. And for Dr. Asri, do you think that the government policy to struggle the hoax is already effective to decrease the hoax report that already in the society? Dr. Asri, you still mute.
All right. Thank you for the question. I think what Malaysia is doing, based on the 3 steps that I've shared in the chat box earlier. Number 1, whenever there is a hoax, the government would respond immediately by coming out with a counter argument or counter explanation almost every day. Okay, that's one aspect that we do. The second one is by providing a website. I think Indonesia also have the same method. I was told about Mafindo, for example. So we also have a website which is called Sebenarnya. So this is where people can check whether the fact that they've received is correct or not, whether the information that they got is correct or not. And number 3 is through laws that we have, legislation that we have by penalizing people who are caught, slapping them with fine and so on and so forth. So I think what the government has done is quite effective to a certain extent. We still cannot stop people from from coming up with these kinds of crazy things. Maybe perhaps it's part of human nature, but in a simple answer, I think what the government is doing is somehow effective to reduce or to decrease the number of fake news that we receive.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Asri, for your answer. And now we move to the Mr. Andre again. Mr. Andre, what is your opinion about the questions? Thank you.
Okay, I would say that I would go back to the point I mentioned before. Fisheries particularly need to be managed based on science, data collection, data analysis. And data on fisheries are complicated because we can't see them. They move everywhere. So it's fascinating when we start going into the details of how to really get good quality of fish data. I mean, and it's something that the whole world struggles with, right? So all I would say in this case is that decisions need to be made on the best available science. I don't have specific knowledge about the lobster case, but I believe that the ministry in charge is the one taking into account these different parameters, the population, and so on. So all I can say from this perspective is that science-based management in fisheries, in forestry, is the way to go to maximize your return. I would just mention one very interesting thing. Fish have an immense, crustaceans like lobsters, they have an amazing capacity of reproducing a resilient way of coming back. So it's up to humans really to manage them in the way that they will maximize their benefits to us in the long term. And for that, I will emphasize this because this is an academic conference. Knowledge, data, analysis is fundamental. Thank you so much.
For your answer. The honorable participant, that is the end of the session 1 for question and answer session. Because of there is no question again in the chatting room, we move to the second session. I will invite you to raise your hand if you still have some questions or comment. Please kindly raise your hand. We are having maybe 2 or 3 more questions again, and we enter to the second questions. Is there any questions? Please kindly raise your hand. Maybe while waiting for you to raise your hand, I will ask to Mr. Andre. Mr. Andre? Hello, Mr. Andre? Okay, you still mute. Okay, do you see the same experience that having by people in your home country in Brazil, right? And in Indonesia to face the environmental damage? Because I think Brazil and Indonesia have a similar environment characteristic, and also maybe a similar people background. Thank you.
That's a very good question. And I mean, of course, as a Brazilian working in Indonesia, I like this. Yes, indeed, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, if you think of it, Brazil and Indonesia are the largest countries with tropical forests, very large coasts. They are high middle income countries that have gone through a turbulent past in the past decades and have come to stability, political, have made significant progress in reducing poverty, in developing the economy. I would say Indonesia even more so, particularly in the past decade or so. And they are both economies that still depend a lot on these natural resources. And they are countries that have irreplaceable value in their natural resources, right? The Amazon, the forests of Sumatra, Kalimantan, Papua, the precious corals of Raja Ampat, Bunaken, Sulawesi, whatever. So a lot of similarities. Now, as to, let me say something about Brazil. I would just say that what is happening in Brazil right now shows the key importance of political leadership, right? We have had years of tremendous progress in the environmental agenda. We have been able to reduce deforestation in the Amazon dramatically for several years, while increasing the agriculture production. That's very important. So this idea that production and environment cannot go hand in hand. In Brazil, this was shown not to be the case. But more recently, things have changed significantly, right? Because there's a new leadership in the country that has a very different view as to the environment. Now, I would just make a very big reflection here, looking at the world leadership, also the leadership in the United States. I must say that it's quite striking that we live in a world of COVID. We live in a world of increased fires, of increased temperatures, of climate events, of increased natural disasters, which show very clearly to the population how important it is to handle these environmental issues. But this is not being reflected in the leadership of some of the major economies, right? And here, the United States and Brazil are two cases, very important cases. So it's an interesting case of a lack of connection between the aspirations of a big part of the population and really the political leadership. So my question is really, I mean, and again, this was also asked, what will happen in the 5 years? I think they will be very interesting 5 years, because these types of questions will become more prominent, and they require this type of very high level political leadership to be dealt with, again, as Brazil shows. And the question is really how people will decide the future they want to have when electing their leaders, right? And that's a big question for Brazil moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Andre, for your questions. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, because of I still seal the chatting room, and there is no people who raise their hands. So I assume that all of the participants already understand the materials, already clear with all of the information that shared by all of the speakers. So according to that statement, I would like to say thank you for all of the presenter here. Dr. Asri, thank you very much for your attending here from Malaysia.
Welcome.
Dr. Dodi, thank you for your time here. And
thank you, Pak Afi.
Thank you. And last but not least, thank you, Mr. Andre Aquino, for your time you already spent here. We can meet you in the next occasion. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, very nice discussion today. We already discussed about COVID-19 effect to the Malaysia, and also how to prepare ourselves for new normal according to the experience for Dr. Dodi. And we move again to the environment issues by Mr. Aquino. I think we already get some important information related to this discussion. And I would like to thanks for all of your spare time here, and then apologize if I lead this discussion. There are so many mistakes, and I hope we can meet again in another occasion. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I will give it back to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rafi, for set us moderated today. And ladies and gentlemen, after this, we will have a workshop of academic writing. But before that, I will play a video about our Faculty of Economics. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned with us.
There are a lot of things that we belong in this beloved faculty. Friendliness, integrity, and creating the brighter future together.